I can't see the chat. So Nicole or Tim or anyone, if you want to let me know if anything pops up in the chat that I should be aware of.
I sure will.
Awesome. Okay. So thanks everyone for being here. Excited to do this. This is the first time we've done it virtually, so it'll be new. I think it'll be great. So we're excited. Oh wait, let's see. Okay. If I can figure out how to work my computer, that would help. Okay, so like we said, my name is Laura McPherson. I have a company called Ideally, and I do freelance writing for mostly tech and software companies, a lot of software as a service companies. So what I'm going to cover with in the digital marketing arena is content strategy, which Tim will talk more about, specifically related to SEO. But I'm going to be talking about it from the standpoint of your target audience. So we're going to cover marketing personas, why you need them, and how to build them. How to create a content plan, and how to nurture leads that you attract with your content. So why you need a content strategy? Your success with content marketing is really tied to how well your content helps your prospects and moves them through the buyer's journey. And your content strategy is essentially a map that tells you, okay, here's the content that we need to produce, where we need to promote it, and how. So before we dive in, I just want to talk from a really high level about the nature of your content strategy. There's a spectrum from educational or aspirational content, education to entertainment or aspirational content. And it's a spectrum. You're not going to have, only educational or only, aspirational entertainment. There will be a mix. But how much your content is leaning one way or the other will depend on two things. First of all, how complex is the problem that you solve? For example, a lifestyle brand, like let's say you're selling, designer handbags. There's not a lot to explain with a designer handbag. It's mainly going to be, you're creating this aspirational lifestyle that, you're trying to generate desire to have. And then on the other end of the spectrum is, say, a piece of technology that you need to spend a lot of time educating. It's complicated. It solves a complex problem. And then the other aspect is how complex is your product or solution. So those two things will kind of dictate which end of the spectrum you'll lean toward. Caveat, my background is technology and software. I have no experience trying to sell, $5,000 handbags. So everything that I'm sharing is going to come, almost everything will apply across the board, but it will, lean more toward the educational type of content. Okay. It's really strange that I can't see you guys. I'm just like talking to my computer. So, okay. So strategy step one is creating your marketing personas. And a persona, if anyone is unfamiliar, a persona is a representation that describes a particular buyer type in detail. So here is an example. This is not the entire persona. It's only one page, but it gives you an idea of, what the persona would cover. And a persona applies to a particular buyer type. So for this example, one of my clients, they are targeting venture capitalists, founders, and supporters of the organization. So this one here is representation of the venture capital and angel investors. So they have 3 for their organization. Most companies will have between 3 and 5 personas. If you have a very complex product, if you're B2B and you're selling to a large buying team, then you may have more. Or if you have a very broad product, so for example, Coca-Cola or Apple, they're targeting a very wide spectrum of people. So you'll have more in those cases, but generally between 3 to 5 is good to shoot for. The benefit of personas is that they give you a way to easily visualize who you're trying to reach. So rather than just, sitting and trying to come up with ideas, you have this person in mind that really helps you and guides you in your process. So with a persona, you're really aiming to summarize motivations, not smotivations as I have here, behavior and preferences. So why are they motivated to solve this problem or buy this product? What are their buying behaviors? What might they do before they make the purchase? What do they, what does the path look like? What are their preferences? All of that is going to go into your buyer personas. The goal of the buyer persona is really just to give you an understanding of a particular buyer type that you are marketing to. So here are the things that you want to think about. As we mentioned, what motivates these people, what frustrates them, really important if you're solving a particular problem. What are their goals? What impact does the status quo have on their daily life? So if they don't change anything, what's going to happen? What does their ideal solution look like? And what do they look for in a brand or a provider? These are the types of questions that you're going to want to answer. So how do you answer these questions? Because I highly recommend not relying on guesswork, because a lot of times, we think we know our audience, but sometimes we'll be surprised when we actually talk with them and, ask them questions. So I highly recommend doing an interview. You don't have to do a lot of interviews, just a few will gather, some really good insights. I recommend between 5 and 10 interviews for each persona. After you hit, about 10 interviews, you'll start seeing a lot of repeating patterns. And then you can say, oh, okay, this is probably true of most of the group if everybody is saying XYZ. And the people that you interview should be your ideal customers. So not necessarily the people that you're serving now if you're aiming to, reach a different target audience in the future, or a lot of times, we will want to interview, our colleagues and that sort of thing. But really your ideal customers are the people that you want to be talking to. And these can be existing customers, prospects that you would like to reach. That can be a really good sales tool, by the way. It gives you a good reason to get in touch with them and have a conversation. So basically, you're just creating this list of questions ahead of the interview, and then asking what you need to know. It won't be what are your goals, what are your aspirations. You'll have to create questions around those to kind of pull that information out. For example, you could ask what do you hope to accomplish in your career in the next 3 years or 5 years, if you're, selling B2B, for example. Okay, strategy step 2 is the content plan. So with the content plan, you really have 3 steps. First of all is understanding the buyer's journey. And then identifying types of content for each stage in the buyer's journey, and then choosing topics for each of those stages. So I'm sure you've seen this before. This is the marketing funnel, the buyer's journey. Starts with awareness, so people just becoming aware of a problem they have or a desire that they have. Consideration is they are figuring out, okay, what are all the different ways I could solve this problem, or what are all the different products that could meet my needs or my desires. And then the decision stage is really choosing the provider of the solution or the brand that they're going to end up going with. It's also represented frequently like this. So in the awareness stage, your prospect is experiencing and expressing symptoms of a problem or an opportunity. And at this point, they're really doing educational research. They're trying to understand, okay, what exactly is this problem? What could this problem be? And then in the consideration stage, they have already defined the problem. And now they're trying to understand all of the different approaches or ways of solving the problem. And then decision stage, they, again, looking at vendors, looking at products. It can be helpful to get really granular and look at each of those stages and map everything out and get a really solid understanding. But if you don't have a super complicated product, or if the buyers, if the decision-making process is not complex, you can really simplify that into two things. First of all, one group is prospects who are ready to buy, and the other group is prospects who are not yet ready to buy. And then you can base your content strategy or your content plan on those two groups. So in order to create your content plan, you're really needing to identify two different things for each buyer persona. First is, what questions are the ready prospects asking? And then what questions are the not yet ready prospects asking? And then you're going to be creating your topics and your content based on those two groups. Topic ideas. So how do I know what questions my prospects are asking, right? So one of the things that your persona research will uncover is some of these questions. So when you're doing those interviews, you'll find out, oh, everybody wants to know about this. But in addition to those interviews, here are a few resources that I really like. One is the content planner from Answer the Public. That one is really good. You type in a topic and it spits out lots and lots of questions that people have typed into Google. And how questions, why questions, all of the different questions. So it's really good. Another is just a Google search. If you search the topic that you're thinking of covering, you'll find questions in that Google search. The other is SEO tools, and Tim will talk more about this. But SEO tools can be really good, again, to find questions that people are asking related to your topics. And then also online forums. And I find that these are really helpful because you'll kind of be able to eavesdrop on conversations that are happening amongst your prospects and find out what they're asking, what they're talking about, and get ideas that way too. And again, important, refer back to your personas because again, you'll find a lot of good questions there. So once you've identified your topics, the other thing to think about is the types of content. And again, your personas will come in handy here as well because they will tell you, what types of content your prospects prefer. For example, do they like reading short blog posts or really in-depth e-guides? Do they prefer audio content like podcasts, video content? You know, what exactly are they looking for? What are they more likely to consume? So there's a lot of different types of content that you can create, and it's really just a matter of identifying, you know, what your audience prefers. So I wanted to touch on this, to gate or not to gate. Gating content, putting it behind a form, is good and bad. So if you gate content, you will get fewer leads, because let's face it, none of us like to share our, you know, email address and then have to unsubscribe from whatever if we don't want to receive emails. But you do have the opportunity to email them. And if you're strategic with your email lead nurturing, then people will not unsubscribe. And you have the opportunity to guide them through the funnel with additional content. If you don't gate, then you'll get more people reading and consuming the content, but you won't have the opportunity to email them. So I really recommend gating high value content only. People are more likely to give up their email address for something that they really, really want. So, you know, kind of having a mix of content, some gated, some ungated, is a good strategy. The other tip I will give is only ask for the information you need. And we've all had the experience of, you know, a form that's 15 fields long and you're just like, no, this is too much. So the fewer fields that you have, the higher your conversion rate will be. And I'm sure you know, I'm sure you've seen this, but in case you haven't, here's just an example of one of my clients and a gated page, a piece of content that they have created here. So they've asked for 5 fields here, information that they really need to know in order to follow up. And then you're ready to create your plan. You have identified the topics that you want to cover, the types of content that you want to create. And the other thing to think about is the promotion plan. And Tim and Amelia are going to talk about SEO and pay-per-click ads, but there are also other ways that you can promote your content. For example, email marketing. If you have built an email list, whenever you create a new piece of content, you can share it that way. You can share on social media. If you do podcast appearances or you know, speaking engagements, anything like that, that's a great opportunity to share a piece of content. Gated is a good idea, so you can follow up with them at that point. And the other thing your content plan will include is a schedule for content publication. That'll just make sure that you know when you're planning to publish each piece of content. And I have a Google spreadsheet here, a template that you're welcome to use. It's super simple, but I actually prefer that. I use it with my clients, and I find that it's just really helpful to, you know, organize things. There are fancy tools out there, but a spreadsheet honestly does everything you need. Okay, so what happens when you have email addresses that you have gathered from your gated content? Now you are going to be nurturing those leads through the buyer's journey. So these are the not yet ready prospects, people who you know, are still exploring, still asking questions, still doing research. So the key question is, what are you going to do to guide the not yet ready prospects through the buyer's journey? So there are a couple of different things that you can do before someone has submitted their email address to you. If a piece of content is either ungated or if it's gated, but you know they haven't actually filled it out yet and they're still reading. the intro piece, you can do calls to action within the content. So for example, let's say you're reading a blog post and you come to the end of a section and it says, read more about this topic in this e-guide, or take this quiz to learn, more about this topic. Those work really well. The other thing is, if a piece of content is gated and you're able to get their email address, then you can send nurturing emails suggesting related content on topics that, so more content on the same topic, or topics that are closely related that you're pretty sure that they would be interested in. You can offer content that is on the same, in the same stage of the buyer's journey. So for example, awareness stage, you can send more awareness content. What I like to do is eventually guide them to the next stage. So maybe present a case study that, talks about how you specifically helped with a particular solution with one of your clients, to help, get them further down the funnel. Okay, so I have a couple of articles here that may be helpful for you. One talks about how to map content to the buyer's journey. So it goes into a lot more detail. This was super high level. So if you're interested in more about the buyer's journey, you'll also see examples of calls to action in that post. I'm pretty sure that I have one that links to how to create a buyer persona. And then the other one is an article that covers 25 different content types that you might want to create, just kind of giving you some ideas. I think that they'll be sending out the slides, so you can copy those if you need, but I'll leave it up here for a couple of seconds. And then I think that's all I have. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask.
Let me turn some mics on and see. I am unmuting everybody, so anybody that would like, feel free to jump in and give me a second to get through them.
It's nice to know that people are there. Whenever you started, Laura, I felt like the same thing. I'm like, oh man, whenever you can't see anybody, you feel like you're just in your own room talking to yourself.
I know. Yeah, it was super weird. Sometimes you can see people, but with this one I couldn't. So I feel like I'm talking to myself.
You are not crazy, Laura.
All right, everybody's unmuted. Feel free to ask questions.
I think they'll have to unmute themselves. So it looks like.
Oh, yes. In case you don't know, there is a microphone on your end. At the bottom left is where it shows on my screen. I don't know if anyone's having an issue. Yeah.
So I don't have so much of a question. I just want to, my name is Javertus Burnett. I just wanted to thank you guys for this. This was impactful. It gave me some things to work on, and thank you, and I appreciate it. So that's all.
So good to hear. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, thanks for having us. We're excited. There's lots more still to be shared. So thank you.
Thank you, Javertus.
You might be able to hear my dog barking. Any other questions?
And feel free to type in chat if anyone is having issues with the mic or just doesn't prefers to type, that's fine. Quiet group.
Yeah,
That's okay.
Chai crowd.
it's quite all right. So do you want me to take over the screen share, Nicole?
Yes, I'm sorry. I thought you all would know what
Okay,
order. I
perfect.
didn't know what
Yeah,
order you're in,
I
but
can
yeah.
take over. I just didn't know on the Q&A how long you want to keep that open, so I didn't want to jump ahead of time.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. And I'll make sure I'm sharing the right one here. And just give me a moment. And can everybody see my screen okay? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, perfect.
Yes.
All right, well, Laura, thank you so much for sharing the persona side of content, which is super helpful, because if you don't know who you're writing for, then ultimately it doesn't matter how good your content is, you're not getting the right audience. So I'm going to kind of start learning some of the SEO component on that. My name is Tim Laurie. I'm the founder of Tip Top Search and Marketing. We're a digital marketing agency that focuses primarily on SEO. SEO, again, is search engine optimization. And tonight we're going to be taking a look at some of the basics. There's a lot to SEO, but once you kind of learn some of the core or foundational principles, it really helps set you off on the right track. So for tonight, we're going to look at 3 things specifically. We'll look at keyword research, on-site optimization, and content optimization. And just kind of the initial high-level view with keyword research, this is, you know, thinking around, you've got your persona, but then do you know what that person is searching? What is that keyword that they're using to find your business or your product? And are you optimized for that? Do you know how to find that keyword if you're not sure what it is? So we're going to look at how to find out what those keywords are. Then on-site optimization is using those keywords to optimize your site. And then the other part of that is then using those keywords to optimize optimize your content on your site. So this would be your blog content and just any other pages, even lead pages can use some SEO as well. So you want to incorporate that verbiage into the content. So again, what is SEO? So just like a basic, I guess, overview of what it is, it's the practice of influencing the search engine. So your job is to make it easier for Google to figure out what your website is, what your web page is. And that's what SEO is doing. It's giving it a clear context of what that is, but then also for your user, you're meeting their intent. So it's knowing what the person that you're trying to attract to your website is searching, and then optimizing towards that intent so that when they get there, their needs are being met, but then also Google sees that same thing and they're able to place you correctly in search. Without that, Google doesn't know where to rank your site, and your site just doesn't rank. So it's really good to kind of have that foundational knowledge. So first thing, keyword research. We're going to look at what keywords are and how to find them. And it's simple. Keywords are what you're typing into the search bar. There's no secret mystery behind what they are. It's simply, what are people searching and what are your audience typing in? So if you were you know, a landscape company in Greenville, then what are those keywords that somebody's going to search for a landscape company? Are they looking for yard maintenance, lawn care, yard service? Starting to look around those keywords and getting an understanding of what those are. That's your keywords. You're going to optimize towards them. And then you have 2 different kinds of keywords. So you have your product and service keywords being one of them. So depending on whether you're selling something, and when I say selling something, thinking around a physical product like this example here, the replacement headlight lens, that's obviously very much a product-driven search. So you would want to optimize towards the intent of that. And as you can see here, we have some of the ads at the top, and then we have AutoZone that have optimized here towards headlight lens housing. They've got headlight lens. Just from some of the basic things, you can tell that they're starting to optimize towards that right thing. Or if you have a service, again, that would be anything from, you know, yard maintenance, lawn care. It could be CPA in Greenville. That would be more of like a service-oriented keyword. And then the other type of keywords you have is content keywords. And we have 2 different snippets here of what a result page could look like. So thinking about that person that's maybe searching for a replacement headlight lens, they might start their journey off by searching for content, and that kind of ties into the persona side that Laura was saying. You're trying to think about that buyer journey from the start of their pain point through to the end of the pain point. So somebody may not know that they need a certain part or a certain piece. If you were a CPA, for the sake of it, somebody may not know what forms they need to collect in order to file their taxes. So if you had a really great, compelling post on here's all the things that you need to gather for going to your CPA during tax season, that would be a really helpful way, and also get you discovered by potential audience. So in the case of this one, we have how to replace a headlight. You can see here that Google's pulling in, this is called a featured snippet. So this content is not only winning organically as position 1, it's also getting a feature to the top. So that means that their post is really well structured and thought out. We can see that there's lots of questions. From these questions, these can also kind of inform us in some of the things that we need to do for optimization. And then moving down further on the result page, once again, we see AutoZone, who was ranking for the headlight lens replacement. They also have content here about how to change headlights. So it totally makes sense that if they're going to sell that product, they've created content to help somebody understand if they've bought it, what to do with it, or if they're shopping for it, here's the parts that you need for it. So I want you to be thinking around those keyword buckets whenever you're thinking about your business and how you would optimize your site. So now we're going to take a look at how to optimize or how to find these keywords. And again, I'm going to move somewhat quickly because there's a lot to SEO, but I want to leave some time if there's any questions, because I find it's one of those subjects that sometimes it's just easier to answer a question that's specific to your business versus giving in theory, if you were an AutoZone, here's what you need to do, because sometimes that can be kind of conceptually hard to tie the dots together. So for your company, let's talk about how would you find the right keywords for it. So one of the most basic ways is to do a keyword search. And again, I hope you can see my browser. So if you were a CPA company, let's say here in Greenville, so I'm doing very much a local SEO type search. The first thing you're going to have is your map pack at the top there, but then you have all the different CPAs. So what you're going to want to take a look at is what are the common threads that people are using here? Like, what are they putting in their copy? What are they putting in headlines? Are they using terms like accountant, spelled out, not spelled out? That's going to give you a little bit of an idea, and you can do all different types of searches. You could do CPA for small business. So we just saw there some suggestions. So Google's already telling you here, like, hey, what about for taxes for small business? So if you're a CPA, it might make sense to have then a page for taxes. Being that time of year, my mind is going to that. So again, just giving this as an example. The next thing that you can be doing is competitor research. So I'm going to go ahead and do one for an example of a page that we're going to look at. So let's do custom coffee labels. So for a company that creates custom coffee labels, and I don't know if Dan's with us, but one of the mentors for Score, he has a business that does custom labels, and this is one of the products that they can create from that. So you would go down here, and again, using that same strategy of taking a look at, what is the title that websites are using, how are they using a keyword in there. So we know that custom coffee labels are part of that, but we also start looking for some of those semantically related things. So I can see here now we've got 2 of them mentioning coffee bags. So if I create custom coffee labels, then perhaps it also needs to be something where I'm talking about the ability to put that label on a coffee bag. We've got in the headline here, custom coffee bag labels, coffee labels. Again, we've got Etsy with coffee bag labels. So you start just looking at the result page as that initial competitor research, and then you dive into a specific page. So if I jump into Sticker Mule, then I can start taking a look on their page of their website to see what are they actually doing. So you're kind of reverse engineering what they're doing with their website. And depending on the size of your business, how many things you offer by way of services or products. This can be a very short task. It could be 3 or 4 pages of your site, or you could have hundreds of pages, depending if you have a wide variety of services or products or whatever that might be. But we can see here, we've got some rich text at the top that's optimized. We've got the custom coffee labels. We've got our H1. Scrolling down, we've got additional things on here that just kind of indicate to us like, okay, if we want to rank a page, we're going to need to have more information on there than just saying custom coffee labels and a picture of our product and a buy now button. So you need to build out something with a little bit more to it. And again, this is a very basic flyover, but you can look and find from the language that they're using. So again, we're seeing other things that are related to the coffee industry just within their text, how they're referring to it. We've got the coffee labels. Again, I'm seeing coffee bags showing up in here. They're using full color labels. So now we're starting to bring in some of the attributes of the products that are used on that. So again, you want to take a look and see what is relevant in there, and then other things on the page. If there's reviews, social proof, those are part of that as well. The next thing is Google Search Console. So most of you are probably familiar with Google Analytics. So Google Analytics is telling you how the traffic got to your site after they've got there. Google Search Console is telling you how the traffic got to your site on the front end of the journey, and it's only looking at organic. So they're going to give you the pages, the queries that people are searching, how many times they're showing you for a specific query, and the click-through rate and some other relevant details. And you can get thousands of lines of queries if you're doing really well at ranking, or you might only have a handful of queries if your site's not really optimized. But you would sign up for that the same way you would for Google Analytics, and using the tracking code for Google Analytics, it'll tie all of that data together. But you can go in here and you can take a look at the queries. And sorry, I just scrolled rather than clicked. Like if you take a look here for this example, for this one, we can see, here are some of the keywords that this site is ranking for, how many clicks it's getting them, and so on. So for you, if you look in there and you have keywords that aren't relevant, then you know that your site is not optimized correctly. Or if you see keywords that are relevant, but Google has you placed in position 21, then it's like, okay, well, I ranked this keyword. It's page 3 on Google right now. I need to improve that page, but I'm at least optimizing in the right direction. I just need to work harder to make that happen, and figuring out then, what does the result page look like? What does your competitor sites look like? And then working that page to get it there. And then the final one that I would say is a way to get your keywords is my favorite, and Laura mentioned about SEO tools. So the one I'm going to share tonight is a tool that I love, is called Keywords Everywhere. It's a little plugin in Chrome. You get an API token, so it gives you a little code to type in, and for about $10, it'll give you 100,000 different overlays or impressions of keywords. So for most users, that's going to last them a really long time. Or if you're like me, where you're kind of obsessive with this and do it all the time, you'll blaze through your credits really quickly, but it's super helpful. So going to a broader one, let's say you created a shipping software and you were trying to sell that. We can now see this is how many people per month are searching for shipping software. So this is where it starts to become really important. Beyond just looking at the competitors, it's knowing the actual volume of how many people search. So if something has a really high search volume, then that may not be the best keyword to go with if you're a brand new site, because it's going to be hyper competitive and really hard to rank. So you're going to want to find some of those lower volume keywords that are maybe easier for you to rank initially, and then you work towards ranking those higher volume keywords. But the other neat thing about this tool is it gives you then related keywords. In this case, ShipStation, which is a e-commerce shipping plugin for Shopify. We can see volume. You obviously don't want to try and compete on a brand name. And then we have other things that people are searching. We can see trend lines of what people are searching per month for a specific thing. And then you can also see what websites are getting by way of traffic. So it gets 430 visits per month to this specific page on shipping software. So it gives you a nice breakdown and the ability to see keywords. So you can really get a lot of information from this tool. And again, for the price, it's probably the best one out there. It's worth, there's free tools out there, but for the amount of information you'll get, for like $10, you will get more information than you know what to do with, but it'll at least give you lots of really good metrics to get going with that. All right, so from there, we now have our keywords. We've realized like, okay, we have work to do. We need to optimize our page, but what does that even mean? How do I optimize it? So this is called on-page SEO or on-site optimization. And there's a handful of things that are a part of that. So you have your title, which you want to include the keyword and be keyword rich, but then also your meta description. So that's kind of like your ad copy that goes in the result page with it. Is that going to entice somebody to click into your site? Or have you left that blank and you're just letting Google scrape something off your page and maybe throw a meta description out there that's not necessarily the best for that? You then have your URL, which is the web address, heading tags, your on-page copy. You have images where you can optimize those, and then things like social proof being reviews. So to kind of show you what I'm referring to, so your title and your meta description. So again, let's look at coffee labels or custom coffee labels. So we have the organic results here. If we take a look, your title is this component right here. And if you use a WordPress-based site, you've probably seen this plugin before. This is Yoast, and it's at the very bottom of the page. You may ignore it, or you may be using it. Hopefully you're using it, but if not, whenever you put in your SEO title, this is where that's going to show in Google, and you want to make sure that you're incorporating a keyword into it. And again, there's the right time and place. You don't want to stuff your keywords in. So if it's a home page, don't feel the need to throw every single keyword that's to do with your site into it. You want it to be natural and fitting. But whenever it comes to products, there's a little bit more freedom in how you can optimize a title tag, because people are looking very specifically for a product. So it doesn't have to be quite as natural language. It can be very specific to where it's just, here's the product and here's a very optimized keyword to represent that. The URL, that matches the intent of what we want to rank for here. So again, we've got a URL that's user-friendly, it's keyword rich. Then the meta description also incorporates, and we have coffee labels, but then it's a longer keyword. We have coffee labels for coffee bags, or labels for coffee bags, I should say. We've got it for boxes, cold brew coffee bottles. So we're starting to give Google some of those signals towards like, hey, we do labels for all these different types of coffee products. So we're starting to get a little bit more granular in our opportunities for ranking. So we're not just trying to rank one thing. We want to rank dozens, if not hundreds. And in some cases with blog content, you can rank thousands of keywords on a page. So we want to really do what we can to help here. And then using something, no minimums, fast turnaround as a great way to get somebody to click in. You want to be honest with what you put there, but again, having a call to action or something that's in there is a great way to get somebody to click through. For the on page, so we're going to break down just the page here a little bit. And again, I'll do a flyover of this. So at the very top of your page, if you're using WordPress, you're going to have, this is your H1 tag. You should only ever use one H1, and you want to incorporate a keyword into it when possible. Again, we want to be natural in how we do things with a product type page like this. This is a natural way to do it. If you have a CPA service, if you're an attorney, it may make sense to have, lawsuit attorney or whatever it might be. I don't obviously do the attorney space, so that was a bad example. But you want to choose something that is relevant to your industry, but again, don't force something in there just for the sake of getting a keyword. Then you want to start building out your copy where it makes sense, where it's natural and easy to read, but you want to include your keyword in it. And one of the things that you can do I don't know if you've ever used, like on a Mac, it would be Command F or Control F, and I think it might be the same in a PC, but that'll bring up like the little find in Google. And when you're on a web page, you could do that and then hit in the keyword you're looking for, and it'll tell you how many times that's used on a competitor's page. So that will give you an idea of density. So if you go into a competitor's page and they've used the keyword 4 times and you've used the keyword 40 times on your page, then that indicates that your page is keyword stuffed. If your competitor has about equal amount of copy, they're ranking, and they've used it 15 times and you've used it 13, then that tells you like, okay, I'm within the right range of density that matches length of document, keyword usage. So again, you don't want to overstuff something. I want to emphasize that because there's really an ease to just keep saying the same word over and over. You want to use variation off that. So again, we have our keyword used in here. We're talking about coffee houses, roasters, coffee cups as we go down the page, coffee bag labels again. We've got boxes, tins, cold brews, so similar to what we had in the meta description. A nice headline here. This is an H2. So coffee label printing would be another variant of how somebody would search for custom coffee labels. We have Google reviews, great social proof for the product that we offer. And then in this one, we also have FAQs. So should somebody be wondering, hey, if I put my coffee bag in the fridge, will my label peel off and then customers be really upset? So again, having just those value adds, it allows us to speak more richly about what we're doing. And that's all part of that on-site optimization. And in this case, it's for a product offering, and it would be very similar with the service. The more robust you can be about explaining your service that you offer, the value to it, explaining anything that would be pain points or resistant points for customers, that's all going to add to it. And you have the opportunity to kind of enrich that with some of the keywords as well as you're doing that. So again, this is kind of the basics of on-page optimization. And then from there, the other place that we're going to do on-page optimization is our content. So Laura's already mentioned the personas, and now we're going to make sure that we can actually get the content in front of that persona. So you figured out who it is, you figured out the questions that they're asking, the pain points they have, you want to create content for that. So kind of like that earlier example of AutoZone, they sell replacement headlights. So they do a blog post on how to replace your headlight. It makes sense. You're meeting the audience in 2 different places. So we want to think about our keyword, but then we want to create then a content version of that. So you have kind of the seed keyword being replacement headlight. So you want to start thinking around, well, what are those questions like? How to replace a headlight? What is a replacement headlight? When do you replace a headlight? You start thinking, what do people ask? And that's how you then start to create your content. You can use answer boxes. People also ask. I'll look at those in just a moment with you. Google has an acronym. So anytime you're creating content, just kind of keep this in the back of your mind. It's EAT, and it stands for expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. So as you're writing something, are you showing expertise in what you're writing? Are you authoritative in the subject? And is it trustworthy? So if they look at it and say, okay, this person is talking about, how to recover from the flu, and they're not a doctor. The post is 2 paragraphs long, and it says, drink some hot tea, go to bed, and wake up the next morning. It's not any of those things. But if you worked at the Mayo Clinic and you put this long post and explained, hey, here's what the flu is, and this is the symptoms that you can experience, and these are the things that you should do. And then for the days that follow that, don't go and socialize, take it easy, and so on and so forth. Google is going to look at that post and check off all of those boxes. It seems a little extreme, but there's so much content that's produced. The expectation is just so much higher now of what the quality of content needs to be. So it's really worth taking the time to invest in doing quality content, because Google will reward it if it's done well. But you truly have to think about all the different things that your audience are asking, and then you need to answer those well. So we're going to take a look at that. We're going to reverse engineer a post here just to kind of help you guys out. You want to use those on-page optimization strategies, and then look for other things like video or other ways to engage. And Laura even mentioned that, like, hey, does your audience like to read blog posts? Is it podcast? Is it video? If you want to rank in Google, the best way is to do it with written content, but there's no reason why you can't have a video in that content, a podcast link in that piece of content that ties into it. It just adds more value, and it also helps it to get discovered that way as well. So whenever you look at a result page, these are some of the things that you want to look for. So you've probably seen these people also ask boxes whenever you put in a search. So I just put in the term water softener here, and we can see people, you know, how much does this cost? What is, you know, the best? Is it worth having one? Is it safe to drink water from one? So that's going to tell me, okay, well, if these questions are things that users are searching, I should probably incorporate that into the content that I'm creating around this. And then as I look at, you know, more of a content type keyword, how does a water softener work? Then I can see video as part of the result page on that, which tells me if I have video, it's probably a good value add within the post, because Google is weighting that heavier on the page. We still have more questions here. So you can kind of go down that rabbit hole of like pulling out questions, and eventually you'll put together a nice bucket of, you know, here's 5, 10, 12 questions that if I answer these really well, it's going to give me a strong post. And in the case of this one, this is a post that we'll reverse engineer here just briefly. That's what we've done with this. We've done a lot of content where we just reverse engineer all the things that are being asked in the result page. So let me see if I can click over here, and this will kind of give you an idea. So whenever I talk about using EAT, so that expertise, authoritativeness, trustworthiness, we've got water softener. This is our keyword. So this is a seed keyword, but then we're using, you know, a content formula. So we're asking, well, what is it? How does it work? Which anybody that's looking for it, those are things they're going to ask before they buy one. And in the case of this client, they sell them. We've got a great video at the top here. So if somebody clicks, straight away the page has engagement before anybody scroll, which is a really good metric for Google. And then the big thing that I'm going to push here is that Google doesn't like waiting for an answer. It used to be like you'd write a blog post and then you'd try and bury the answer at like the very last sentence on the very last paragraph to try and get people to go all the way down. Google now says, no, just answer the thing right away. So I want you to kind of think about that user landing, then you answer, then you expand on the answer. So straight away, you know, we're telling them, here's what a water softener is. But then that's just a surface level kind of answer. But then we go much deeper into what is a water softener? How does water softener work? What are the components? We have a list format within that, so that helps for ranking lists in Google. We've got images, which in this case, these ones kind of move and animate the process of it. We go deeper, so we don't just sell to homeowners. This company also sells to plumbing experts and things like that. So it's not good enough to just give like a surface level answer. So we need to start going into some of the more technical things of how a water softener works. We have a product incorporated. So if somebody wants to go ahead and buy one, what do they remove? So we're showing that expertise of like, hey, we don't just sell the product. We know what the product does. We know what it removes. Is it safe to drink it? We're giving, again, answers. We're linking lots of other resources. And you can see there's lots of answers here. Again, I'm just kind of in a very high level overview of kind of the level of what you want to write to. And again, if topic permits, if the topic is something that doesn't merit 2, 3, 4,000 words, you don't write to that length. But this is giving that example of like, if there's a lot of questions and concerns and resistance that come up against getting something, you want to answer all of that. And the more robust you can be, the better. And Google now, as of about, let me see, 3 weeks ago, they just introduced what's called passage ranking. So you've probably already experienced it where you click something and it'll take you into a document or a blog and it'll be highlighted yellow and it'll be a section 2/3 of the way down the post. So Google is now ranking passages within content. So if you answer something and it is a long form post and you're worried, will the user find that? Then the answer is yes, Google will go in, they will take that headline, they will take that section, and they will drop the user right into the specific answer that meets their needs. So having that robust authoritative content creates more of an opportunity to rank for that versus if you have something that's very thin, you don't have headlines, you don't have answers to all the different questions, you're not going to show for those type of things. So again, when do we need to replace it? What is a salt-free version? And then we have some additional products here. So if somebody wants to add the cart, they can go ahead and do so straight from the post, and we've made it really easy for them. So I don't want to overwhelm you by like, do I have to do something that long? Again, this is just an example of like, if you invest in content, it's really worth it. And just as a metric for this one post, so this post brings about 8,000 users a month to this site. This is just one of dozens of posts they have like it, and the traffic value. So if they had to pay for all those users, it would cost them 25,000 a month. So that values this post at about 300,000 a year. So that alone from like a traffic acquisition cost is one of those things where like, okay, if I invest $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 into something spectacular and it brings me this return, then it's very much worth it. In your case, it could be like if I invest 20 hours of my time to write this really long, great post and maybe shoot a video on my computer doing a screen share of how to do a specific thing. And then I post it and it, you know, brings me 500 users a month or it brings me 1,000 users a month. That is a great return on time. And then eventually you'll get to the stage where it's like, all right, I'm ready to, you know, onboard somebody to help me to do more of this or to beef up the frequency of how I'm doing it. But content, it can be an investment to do it right, but when it's done right, it can have a big return for you. So that's kind of my high level overview. And I think, again, I'll open it up for Q&A. There's a couple of links to resources. I put the beginner guide to SEO. There's like 6 videos in there, which they're about 10 minutes a piece, but they're really great. And they'll dive into, again, like keywords on page. It'll do some technical things, linking, stuff like that, which kind of goes further down the rabbit hole. And then we also have Keywords Everywhere, which is the tool that I was using in the browser. And then you can drop your website into mine, and that'll give you an audit to explain if there's any issues going on with your site too. So, all right. So,
I unmuted everybody. We did have a question from Cameron. Cameron, if you want to ask about what you did in chat, feel free.
all right. Sorry, chat disappeared whenever I went in there.
He had mentioned, let's see, he said you can, oh no.
I already have an SEO company that I've used. The company, I'm looking into other options. Can I dig into the Google Search Console myself? Cameron, yes. So you should have full ownership of your Google Analytics and Google Search Console. You should be the owner, not just a user. So if you're currently just a user on those, request that your current agency makes you an owner on them, which means that if you ever part ways, you don't lose your data or that you have issues trying to get that. And again, if you have an SEO company doing work for you, they should definitely have Search Console set up. If they don't, I'd be a little concerned about what they're doing, because that's just it's a very basic and core thing to do in order to figure out what's going on with the site. And I'm seeing another one here. Frontier does amazing work. I agree. They're great people. I love them. Let me see. You can look at Google Search Console on your own. It's pretty straightforward. Oh, thank you, Laura. I appreciate you adding this sponsor. Has anybody else got a question?
You did so good.
All right. Amelia, I think if nobody has a question, I'll just turn it over to you and you can help them out.
All right, all right. Do everybody hear me well? Okay,
You're good.
let me let me share my screen here, and you should be seeing the presentation, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll try my best here to put the chat in front of me. If you are still with me, which I hope, now we are going to move into the portion of paid advertising. As Laura covered the part of the content and Tim covers part of the how do you distribute that organically on Google and search engines. Now we are going to explore how you can also promote that content on search engines and social media when it makes sense. My name is Emilio Garcia. I am the owner of an agency called Boundify. We offer demand generation services, mostly for B2B companies, meaning companies that sell to other companies. And I would love to reach out to you if you are willing to. Here right now on the screen, you are seeing this scan kind of code that you can with your phone just open the photos, and that will pretty much send you to LinkedIn, which is the social media platform that I use the most. So it will be great to connect with you. And these are the topics that I want to cover in this last section. We are going to talk about some basics here, understanding what's paid media or paid advertising, the difference between advertising on search engines and advertising on social media platforms like Facebook or LinkedIn. We will talk about a little bit of the different temperature. I use the word temperatures and offers to understand how do you promote different kinds of content. The basic elements of a PPC campaign or a pay-per-click campaign or a paid advertising campaign, and putting all those basics into action if the times allows it. And obviously some resources and some Q&A at the end. Now I'm going to move into paid media, but before, if you are following this and help me out here with some comments, put on the chat, please, if you have done, any paid advertising, any kind of campaign, either on Google or Facebook. Put yes or no, please, and see. Okay. So Tareka, Cameron, Tamika too. All right, very well. Sherwood hasn't. That will give me an idea of, how deep we will go. Awesome. Very well. And now moving into another question, if you put there, for those of you that answer yes, put there what kind of campaign. Was it in Google ads? What's the Facebook ads, LinkedIn ads? What kind of platform do you use? Oh, Yellow Pages. Okay. Facebook ads. Tamika, what's Facebook ads? Facebook, yeah, pretty common. Very well. Well, hopefully you will learn something new here on that arena. So let us start. Cameron also did Google AdWords. Yeah, it was known that way. Okay, very well. So let us go right away and explore how paid advertising is different from what you usually will do on organic. And I'm putting just here an example. And now, one thing that I say all the time is nowadays it's very hard to distinguish the difference between the two. But for example, using in this case the query commercial green cleaning services, these are some examples of the organic results, right? You have the headline as Tim was explaining and some description of the page and all that. And if you do the same search and want to see some ads, these are the ads, right? And I go back and forth because honestly, there's almost no difference nowadays. There's just this mention of the word ad at the top, and that's it. Nowadays, they have kind of blended over time. The same happened for social media. For example, this is a regular post from Facebook, of course, and and someone put it here, and the amount of people that will see these publication will be just people following the page, and just an ad looks very similar. It's just like a post. Actually, on Facebook, there are many places where you can publish them, but the difference is that you will see the word sponsor or promoted or some kind of word, similar work, depending on the platform. I actually have here some examples too for LinkedIn. You can see here this one from Main Street. It looks almost like a post, but it says promoted here at the top. And there are some others like this one here. And I think one at the very, very top, this one, it doesn't look like, but it's an ad too, right? It says the word here. So, and I don't know if some of you have seen some similar ads on LinkedIn where they send you something like a message. So those are ads too. So you have very different formats available. Obviously, you have the websites where you will see the banners and all of them. Obviously, the biggest difference between the two approaches, organic and paid, is how do you control reach? In the case of search engines, as Tim was saying, it takes time, and you are competing against other content producers, and you have to be patient, and most of the control will be on the part of Google or any other of the search engines, because they have the rules. When you are paying for that, you pretty much are buying the access to just be on top of those results, and you have more control about when and how you show up. The same applies for social media. When you are paying for social media, you can select the people that you're going to show the ad, so you have control over who sees the ad, versus when you just publish organically, where your reach is determined by the number of people that follow your page, and that will be kind of like the main difference. Now, another question that I usually get is, what is the difference between paid search and paid social, right? So I have paid advertising, but if I'm intending to promote my product or service, should I pick one or the other, or can I work on both? And the best way to describe that difference is with I use this example of intent versus context, or capturing demand versus generating new demand, right? So most of paid advertising that you do on search is for products or services that people is already searching for. Therefore, there's already a demand for them, like in the example that we were putting here. So if you are offering a product or service that is in a category that is well known and people is aware already of the problems that they have, like Laura was describing, they know potential solutions, they will go to the search engine and actually look for the product itself, then paid search is awesome in that way to help you promote your products and services. Actually, one example that I bring all the time is that, for example, if you have something like this, right, dress, black shoes for men, you will find specific ads. It cannot be more relevant like this, right? And obviously you will not see any other kind of ad, because that's exactly what you're searching for. So for those kinds of products or services, paid search is fantastic. However, and therefore here you have clear intent. However, for scenarios where your products or service might not be known to the person or the client, social plays a better role, because there you can be in front of the right person or the right crowd, even when they might not be aware of the product that you offer in particular, or even the overall solution. So for things that are new, and examples that I use all the time is for people, for example, doing new apps that solve unique problems, then pay social, it's a better strategy. Also, if you are new in the market and you want to build your brand awareness and consideration stages, like Laura was explaining, pay social is also a great tool. The last thing that you can use it is if you have already a big crowd on your website that is regularly visiting your website because you have done great content, then you can remarket or reach out to the right people in one of the social media platform. That's a great way also to keep your brand top of mind in front of in front of, you know, the users. So those are some ideas for those of you that have explored either Facebook or Google and have not had success. For example, in the case of Facebook, sometimes is, or my general recommendation is, if you have a product that is well known and there's a solution, start with Google. It's sometimes more expensive in cost per action, cost per click. But if you already have a market, then tap into what people is already searching for. And once you cover that to a meaningful way, then you can shift into something like social media to help people find your solution. Because usually for social, you will have more success if you have a group of people that already know you, which is most of the time not the case. Now, moving into the next best practice, if you can say it, is the concept of bringing the right the type of traffic to the right type of offer. And I will show you this, you know, I will use this graphic to kind of like give a reference for that. And is that usually on paid traffic, you have to be super aware of that conversion intent. And depending on it, that's the offer that you will present, or the kind of message that you will present to your audience. Here are some examples. For example, when people is searching, you can be more forward-looking and ask for, as Laura was mentioning, put things behind forms, offer consultations, because people is already most of the time ready to buy. But as you go back on the other channels and social, and especially video and even display, people is actually not searching anything. So you need to show more brand content that educate, but not necessarily ask for people's information. And the way that you can translate that into the kind of offers that you can put on paid campaigns, here's a great way to see it. If you, for example, want to get consultation quotes, even demos for products or trials of your products, then you try these warmer channels like search. Or if you're going to do paid social, you do it on warmer audiences like remarketing audiences. You don't go call on someone that have never heard of you and try to ask them to, you know, subscribe to a demo or start a trial of your product. It will not work. For those scenarios where you have a warmer audience, maybe they have visited the website before or are in the right, you know, in the middle of the process, you can do offers that match that intent, like videos, ebooks for download, case studies, webinars, things where you will ask just for a couple of information, for a couple of fields like name and email, but no much than that. And for very cold audiences that have never heard of you before, you use top of the funnel content that is just educate people on even not just the solution, but the problem. For example, it can be infographic, white papers, or just blog posts in some cases might work. So that's kind of like a guide. If you want to create kind of like a matrix of this, is if you're starting right away and you have limited budget, the first recommendation, capture existing demand on a search engine like Google. And if you have extra budget to spend, then go for a social media platform. And once you decide one of the two, you will decide if you want to spend more money on warmer traffic that is search intent, that have a high intent, and for those you will offer more of a consultation or a form like that. And if you want to spend some money in educating and bringing people and making them aware of your offer, you will spend more money on the other offers. And I will show you in the next slide how do you break down that. Now that we have discussed that, let us talk about the different elements of a campaign, of a PPC campaign. And there are three basic elements. You have to decide your audience. You have to pick a format or message, which is the ad, and you have the offer, which usually in paid advertising campaigns comes in the way of a landing page, which is a small version of a website page that you use to implement the offer. So we will explore those elements here. For paid search, as an example, I will use Google Ads. And for paid social, I will use Facebook ads, but you can use, you can apply this to another platform like LinkedIn app or any other one if you want to. So in the scenario of Google Ads, I will pretend that my objective is getting leads. You will see there are many more. And I will show you some basic ideas around the how do you pick keywords and how do you select some demographic elements. Also, of course, we will discuss the typical message that you can create for Google Ads search, which is a text ad. And finally, we will explore some landing pages for that topic of cleaning services that I was showing before. So goals or objectives. If you open an account on Google Ads and you start creating a campaign, you will see something similar like this, something similar to this, where you have the objectives of the campaign, and depending on the objectives or the goals, it will offer you different kinds of campaigns, right? Because in Google Ads, you can create more than just search ads. You can create the banners, you can create shopping ads like the ones that I show. And obviously you can advertise on using video through YouTube and similar partners. So for example, you will see here that you can create campaigns that are more brand awareness and reach. Those usually go into display and a new format that Google has that is called discovery. And if you have more of sending people to your website, just bringing traffic and more of a consideration stage, or even for leads, then you will offer something more like search, which is available here. So depending on your goal, it will be the campaign that you will offer. For this case, for this scenario, we will stick with search. And your main tool, the number one tool that is free that you can use to understand the kind of keywords that you might select is the Google Keyword Planner, right? It's a simple tool that comes within the platform, and you set up one keyword very similar to the process that Tim was describing for organic, and you will get some basic information about the average monthly searches, how many people is searching for that keyword. There's going to be a suggestion on how much you should bid for that keyword. And if it's already on your account, it will show you what percentage of the account of the impressions are you getting on your own account. So that's the basic tool that you can use. There's some others that are more sophisticated. One that I like for paid advertising purposes is one called SpyFu, and I will show it to you too here. And SpyFu allows you to do a little bit of competitive keyword research. So you can see the cost of some keywords, but also if you type the URLs of your competition, of your digital competition, you will be able to see to some degree what level of spending they have and kind of like the keywords that are using and even some of the ads. So very, very powerful. So let me move here and show you some examples of that. So this is the Google Ads interface, and in this sprocket here you have the keyword planner, and here you can start your campaign. And for example, I was going to put here home cleaning services. And here's just an example of how easy it is to set up, right? You select the location and you can be super specific. You can go for the whole country, or you can go for just a state. You can go for South Carolina, right? And it will drill down to that and it will update the graphics. You can even go down to specific zip codes. So it's very powerful in that way. You will be able to see the keyword that you type in, and it will very similar to what Tim was showing for people also ask. It will suggest you some of the other keywords that people is paying for. One key difference that you will find in a tool like this is that it will focus more on transactional keywords. Rarely you will find here questions. It's more about, well, the services near me, right? and variations of those, right? And the guidance here is the cost per click that you can use. And the one thing that is important for you to reference here is that you will have something called low range and high range, which is the minimum that you need to be to show in the first page, even if it's at the bottom, and a recommendation of what should be your higher bid, so you can show at the top. That will inform you or give you an idea about budgets. Because, for example, if you are bidding for this keyword, if you're not willing to bid at least or have a daily budget of $10 per day, for example, for this keyword, you will rarely get at least one click per day. So that will give you an idea about the budget. It will show you also competition, other players in the area here. And if you add some of those keywords to the plan, and I will just do something here right away, just for showing purposes, then with your budget, you will be able to see the results that you will get, right? Imagine that you have tens of thousands of dollars here, then you will get an idea of the amount of clicks and impressions and the cost per click and the average position of your ad. So it's very powerful, but you don't have to use all the different kind of statistics here. At least the important thing is just to go and see what is the average cost of the keywords and get some ideas of other keywords that you might be missing on your research beyond the basic ones for your core service, right? So that's one way to start. The other one is this one, SpyFu. I think someone put it there in the chat. Thank you. And SpyFu is also helpful because it does the same thing. It's more of a mix of SEO and paid advertising tool. So it will show you things that are SEO oriented, like questions and similar keywords. But here you also have what other keywords the platform recommend for you to buy based on what advertisers are paying. You can get an idea of the volume as well. And out of that volume, how many people or how many clicks are going to paid. And also you get some idea of the cost per click, very similar to what you have on the keyword planner. But the feature that I like the most, as I was saying, is that you can use the domain of a competitor. And I'm using here Made Pro, one that I know they have some advertising here. And it will give you an idea of the keywords that they're using, an estimation of their monthly budget, and the traffic that are getting out of that, and even some idea of who are their competitors and the overlap that they have on the keywords. So it's very powerful in that way. You can get some extra ideas on keywords that you might be missing, that you might add to your campaign. And even you can get some idea of the copy that they are using, just to get you started. Obviously, you don't want to copy exactly what they have. It's more of understanding what's their your competition is talking about for specific keywords, and look at the differentiators of your offer, and so you can make something different that stand out on the query. So that's SpyFu. Now, one last recommendation that I have on in general with keywords is if there's one thing that you can take out of the conversation today, is to remember this, that when you are doing paid search, you are bidding for keywords, but in reality, you are paying for queries or search terms. And I'm going to use our own account to show you this example. For example, you can see here that I have the keyword demand generation services. This is the keyword that I added to the campaign. But you can see here that the ad was shown for demand generation programs. Google deemed that as a closely related term to the keyword that I'm bidding for. And while it's very similar, the intention of someone looking for a program might be different from the intention of someone looking for services, right? So let me show you another example here, if it's here. So you can see, for example, that even if you have this short term, you can show up for something way longer than that. So it's very important that when you're creating the campaign, you go to this section, it's called search terms, and see what are you showing up actually for, not just the keywords that you put. There's a lot of ways that come from not understanding this, and you will discover that you're showing up for terms that are not relevant to your business, or products that you cannot offer, variations. For example, some example, if you sell something but you don't repair it, or similar things, then you might show up for repairs or for parts, and all those scenarios probably are not of interest to you, and you want to exclude those keywords. One way that you can envision this is through this called matches, right? If using that same scenario of men's formal shoes, if you use this called exact match, which uses some brackets on the keyword, then you will only show up when people exactly type that, or close variations of that. And if you broaden the match, for example, for phrase, then you can show up for longer phrases like cheap men's formal shoes in Miami. And again, you will decide if you want to show when someone is searching for cheap products or not. And as you go by, you will broaden that to the point where broad match will show up for a lot of stuff, right? So obviously we don't have the time right now to kind of like go deep on that, but remember that, write it down. When you are creating your campaign, take some time to explore on Google about match types and decide at what level do you want to show up. And once you decide that, keep tabs on those search terms so you can have an understanding of what people is actually typing. Now, into the text ads themselves. So this is an example. The ads on Google are quite simple. The basic elements that you have is you have a URL or the landing page or the place that you will send people once they click the ad. And this is called the final URL here. And then you have the option to add 1, 2, or up to 3 headlines. And those is the main message that you want to put here in there, versus the organic world is kind of like the title of the page. And then you have the option to add 1 or 2 descriptions that will be like the meta description of a regular page. So you have control over those elements. And finally, you have something called display pad, which is on top of your domain, the domain that is advertising, some keywords that you can use here. And so the general recommendation will be, without trying to game the system, try to sprinkle, if you will, the keyword that you are bidding for on, especially on the headline, right? You want to make sure that you cover that. If someone is searching for commercial cleaning services, you want to make sure that at least one of the headlines mention that keyword in some way. But it's also obviously the opportunity to put the things that make your company different, because this is the part of the ad that will stand out. So in the overall scheme of things, the headlines are the most important part. And that's the reason you have 3, and there's a new ad format where I can actually put tens of them. And I highly recommend that at the beginning. Make sure that if you have access to those kind of ads, they are called expanded ads. You put as many headlines as you can come up with, because Google will start testing them and will choose the combination that works best for you for every occasion. The right combination might be different for different places, different devices, different searchers. So if you have multiple options, you will be able to show the right ad to almost every specific person that you want. The same goes for descriptions. Here you can take the time to explain in more detail what you offer. And usually here's the place where you want to put some call to actions, right? It's really, really important that you close with that. And finally, on the display pad, while it's optional, my recommendation is you try to sprinkle, if possible, if it makes sense, some of the keywords that you will use for your ad, right? So like, for example, here in cleaning services. So that's part of the recommendations. Again, if you, for whatever reason, can't think of some ideas, go to tools like SpyFu. SEMrush also have a section where you can type in the domain a competitor, and you will see some of the ads. And of course, if you just type the term that you want and go to the ads that are going to show up here, you will also get an idea of what people is putting there, right? So those are great ways to do that. Finally, landing pages. Let me open them. This is where you put your offer, and this is the third element, right? So summarizing, you have your audience. Those are the keywords. Who is going to see the ad when they make searches? Second element, you have the message, right? That's your ad. How you are going to entice them to click and go to see your offer. And finally, you have the offer itself, what's after they click the message. And I'm putting here some examples to show you how people approach differently that offer. Some of them I like, some of them I don't. For example, in this one, and remember, all of them are about cleaning services. I like that they have the most important kind of like, not call to actions, but potential actions that someone might take right away, right? Above the fold, just before I scroll, they have the option of a form or a phone number so people can talk. What I don't like, obviously, is the general layout, not that interesting in my opinion. They don't have a menu that stand out a lot, but they still have a menu here. People can get distracted. And remember, you are bringing these people paying per click usually. So each visit that do not convert, not necessarily a waste. You can reuse that on remarketing, but still an investment that you want to maximize. So removing any links that are not relevant to what you want the person to accomplish will be ideal. The other thing that I don't like, is that this form has too many questions, right? And that usually will make people to stop the process. Fortunately, they have the phone option available there, but my recommendation will be ask for just as many points of data that you really need to take action. If there's information that you can ask later by email or over the phone or just fill on your own based on social media profiles, that's better than putting a lot of fields here. That's really, really important. Now for this one, as you can see, again, I don't like the overall layout for many reasons, but the main ones is that too many options here to click. I don't have a clear idea of what to do after, right? I can see the phone number here, but after that, everything is offered here. I can even apply for job opportunities. So there's some social proof here, but it's very messy. I get confused. Probably I will just leave. This one is I like a little bit better. They might be using here a video, a prominent that with a form. They have contrast. Seems like you're asking for less information and more that allows them to quote. I like the button, right? They have seen my price, but still some navigation here. And finally, probably this is the one that I like the most, which is actually from MadePro. In this way, you can see there's no navigation. There's a clear offer here. Get a free cleaning estimate. Our pros love cleaning Greenville. And I just asked for a handful of fields. There's some social proof here why clients are happy about it, some features. So this is a typical combination that is very powerful on landing pages. You want to have the offer clear at the top because most people will not scroll down. You will be amazed of what percentage of people don't scroll. It's close to 80%, or in some cases 90% of the visitors from a campaign will not scroll down. So some will do, and those are usually the ones that convert. You want to have the information here available. But for those that don't, you want to have a clear offer here, no navigation, except maybe for a link to the page if they want to explore the whole website, right? So that's the general recommendation that I can have on that one. All right. So let's move into Facebook ads. Very similar scenario. I know that we don't have that much time, but the idea is let us simulate that we have a campaign. Our goal is going to be traffic in this case. And the way that we select audiences here is going to be through demographics, through interest and behaviors. And the message is going to be an image ad. And finally, the offer is going to be the same landing page. So in this case, you can see that the way that you can select or create campaigns is very similar. You have three main buckets: awareness campaigns, consideration campaigns, and conversions. And if you see, these platforms follow the same idea that Laura was presenting for how do you create content, right? If you want people to just be aware of your brand, then you go for these kind of campaigns where the metrics of success are going to be how many people saw the ad and how many people I reach, not necessarily if they visit the website or if they convert, if they fill a form. If you have a campaign where you want to optimize for people spending time on your website or spending time on your page or viewing some videos or even starting message conversations, everything that is bucketed into consideration, you will pick this other objective. And finally, if you want to focus on conversions like requesting consultations, if you have a store that sells online on sales, then you focus on these other objectives too. So it's really, really important because most of these platforms will optimize or will improve performance based on your goal. If you want to get conversions, but you start a campaign just for people to engage with your post, you will never get leads out of that. And the other way around. If you have a brand awareness campaign, you might expect some people visiting the website, but most of them will just see the ad, engage with it, but not necessarily visit the website if that is your goal. So spend some time understanding each of the objectives. And of course, if you want to split your budget between multiple objectives, you can do that too, right? Instead of putting all your eggs in one basket, you can put some money into different strategies and see what works and what not. But in this case, we're going to use traffic. That will be the assumption. And now you have this area. And fortunately, because we are sharing here, I can show you this more directly on Facebook, for example. So you can see it's in this case, you can choose locations, very similar to what I was showing you on Google. You can choose the whole of the US, or you can choose a state, you can choose regions, or even specific areas, right? Like a radius around you. For example, if you have a store, you can say, I want to show my ads on people that is 5 miles around where my store is, just people passing by. So use that on your advantage. One recommendation that I usually have here, and it applies both for Google and Facebook, is make sure that if you are just intending on people that live close instead of people that is just passing by or was recently there, but it's not their permanent location, that you select that, right? So you have that. You can use demographics, right? Like age brackets, which I highly recommend that you define. And then you have the wealth of the detailed targeting that you can get from Facebook, and in some cases from Google and LinkedIn, based on information that they have. So it's very powerful. There are basically three big buckets. I will try to show you here them. Browse. So you have demographics, which is plenty of information about education, life events, relationships related to work and all that. Then you have interest, what people have declared is relevant for them. And then you have behaviors, which is what they actually do. And this is important to keep in mind. There are some interests that people have declared on the platform because they like movies or they like certain sport teams. And there are things that they actually do, like if they purchase online quite often or they travel a lot. And this is mind-blowing, the amount of information that Facebook has on us. The same goes for LinkedIn. but it's available for you for advertising purposes. The main thing that I can tell you about selecting populations here, selecting demographics here, is that use this concept of nesting behaviors or interests one on top of the other. You can see it with, hopefully you can see it here. It says and, right? And let me show you an example. This demographic that I have selected here, because it's nested, it's only 200 people. But if I don't do that, let me start clear here. Let me remove everything. And delete this one. There you go. You can see my initial demographic is 59 million people for the male locations and cities in the US. So if I say something like, let me start with education, and I just want to show the ads to high school grads. So that will reduce the amount of people that might potentially see the ad, depending on my budget, to 8 million. If I say, well, I also want people that on top of that, I don't know, they like advertising. I don't know who will like that. I guess it's only us. But in this case, you think, well, I have narrowed it down. Now I have high school grads that also happen to be interested in advertising. And you will see that actually your audience has increased, not reduced. Because pretty much what you're saying here is that you want to show the ad to people that either had graduated from high school or is interested in advertising, not the two of them together. This is a common mistake. And again, just like with Google, where if there's one thing that you can take away is to watch your match types. With Facebook or LinkedIn, when you select in the audience, make sure that you nest them, right? So the way that you should do that is that you, instead of just adding it to it, you narrow the audience, and now you select the other interest or behavior or whatever you're selecting, and you will see the difference. Now it's only less than 3 million, right? Because now I'm really asking for people that have both graduated from high school and are interested in advertising, right? So explore this. It will make some suggestions for you based on your initial typing. So it's like putting that initial keyword, and after that, it will suggest you some interest and some behavior. So you don't have to scroll to all the information available there. But that will be the main recommendation there on audiences. And of course, after you select your audiences and depending on your budget, it will make some estimations about how many people can you reach, and the amount of the goal that you want to accomplish. What amount of views or clicks or conversions, if you have conversion data, or just impressions. So you can see the more you're willing to spend, the more people you reach from your target population, and the more of your objective you can get. In this case, we want landing page views. So I put more money on a daily basis. I can reach more people. And I'm still, just reaching on a daily basis 10,000 out of the 200,000 that I have as my mark. Actually, you can see here on the graph, as you move the spending, how will your results will increase. And you will see here, just like with Google, that unfortunately on paid advertising, the problem is that as you spend more, your results do not scale exponentially the way that they do organically. Here, the more you spend, there's a point where they're diminishing returns, mostly because of competition. And then your money doesn't give you the same amount of results, right? So something to keep in mind. Obviously, you should diversify your efforts, and paid will be one of those levers, but shouldn't be the only one that you have at your disposal when trying to promote your business. All right. So that's for audiences. For the message, the image is pretty straightforward. You have the option to add some text that will show up at the top of your ad. And there's a URL that usually should match your domain, but doesn't have to, strangely. You have the headline, which is gonna show up at the bottom. and you will have a call to action, which was going to be this one. People actually can click the ad itself, and it will send them to the landing page anyway. The big recommendation that I have here is that try to put as little or as little text as possible on the image itself, right? In the case of images, it's very tempting to put the logo and some big headline and some description on the ad. And I'm not even saying that you should just have a plain image, but there's a reason you have a space for copy here for your headline and for your text at the top. And just the image should be just attention grabbing, or it can be a video. And if you are going to put some text, something that takes less than 20% of the space. In any case, fortunately, if you don't believe me, you can always test. You can, and that will be the second big recommendation. There is no perfect ad. What works best is to have at least 3 or 4 variations of them, so you can see what your audience like, and the platform can focus on spending on that particular ad instead of just focusing on one. So one quick way to test, both for Google and for Facebook, is that you can have the same image and change the headline, or change the call to action, or say something different on the text. And one of the variations can be the image with a title or a logo, so you can see what impact have the text. Usually you will find that your conversion rate at the end might be higher, but your reach will be lower, and maybe your cost will be a little bit higher. So on the overall result, your ads with text on the image will not behave as well. But again, don't believe me, every case is different. What matters is that you put options out there so you can see by yourself the difference and what works for you. All right, very well. Finally, here are some resources that we have been discussing that you can go and explore on your own. As I said, both SEMrush and SpyFu will allow you to, one, look for keywords that you can use for paid advertising, and also look at the competition and see what keywords they might be using, what levels of budget they might be using, and also what kind of ads they might be displaying out there. You can always go to Google and do the search on your own. Use the keyword planner for better information about Google. There is one place that you can go to see ads for Facebook, and I apologize because it's not this one. I will try to find it if we have some conversations here. Yeah, it's not here, but I will update that link. For any given page, you can go to a section on it and look at the ads that they are promoting because of transparency, and you can give an idea. You can get an idea of what your competition is doing on the advertising place. And finally, if you want to get some inspiration for cool landing pages and general principles of design, you can go also to Instapage, the templates that are there. Instapage. Landing page templates is this one. Obviously, you will have a platform of your own, but these layouts are great. It's a great start. You don't have to use the tool itself. It's just for inspiration. So you will see that they will follow most of those principles here. And there are many variations per business that you can get inspiration from if you are short of ideas. And I think that's it. Thank you. And if you have any questions, please let me know. And I hope you have got value out of it.
All right, unmute everybody.
Very well.
I had a couple questions. And thank you. You guys are so informative. So we have so many different clients that come to SCORE. And I know one is one popular one I hear a lot about is home bakeries. And then another one was kind of like a crossover with education and a holistic health product. So for my own knowledge, whenever we're talking to various clients, like, is there a certain industry or field that any of you find to be not as good, or maybe that's the wrong way to say it, but like maybe content is a better way to start for some people than paid, or vice versa? And maybe one specific I had about your SEO, Tim, was like, is there a product line or a industry type where video maybe is a better start than written content, or one of them is more effective rather? So don't mean to throw all that, but anybody who wants.
I got a couple of thoughts, but if somebody else wants to jump first, they can. Otherwise, I can kick it off. Whatever's.
Go ahead,
All
man.
right. All right. So on the one that you mentioned there, so like the bakery, I think of like how I typically discover foods that I want to eat, and that's such a visual thing. And straight away, my mind goes to like grassroots, being really good on Instagram, leveraging like tags, things like that. So again, if you're local, it's going to require other things in a non-pandemic environment that would be going to like the markets and all the different places where people are to get exposure. But that for me is a really visual thing. So for that, I feel like your biggest return is going to be just awesome photography of great pastries and things you're going to eat, and then pushing that through social and various other ways to get that visibility. And I think of like the bake room as a great example locally, where like if you used to get to the farmer's market at 8:15 a.m., they'd already sold out of their morning buns by 8:15, and the market opened at 8. And it's like, you guys need to make more of these, but they've just done such a great job of really pushing these beautiful looking like morning cinnamon swirl type buns that like people would flock there, that eat them, and then it's gone. But then on the other question where you're asking about like video versus SEO content, if you have a really technical product, video can be great for that, because sometimes trying to explain that in a very complex written article is not the same as walking somebody through the steps, or if it's doing something very technical. So I would think about like the changing your headlight example. Like, it's fine to write that out as a post, but sometimes just seeing like, oh, I go in and I unscrew this on the back, and what does that look like having that visual example really helps. But the only thing that I would say is kind of the limiting factor in that is if you solely do video and post that video into YouTube, then your audience is going to go to YouTube and watch the video. Whereas if you post it to YouTube, also post that on your site, and then there's lots of tools that can transcribe video content, where if you then have a transcribe as well, and you can go in and kind of embellish that. So maybe put a slightly different introduction on it, clean up some of the voice so it reads more naturally. Then that way you have the benefit of video and written content, so you can rank it in a couple of different ways. But yeah, video for more complex things is great. For comparisons, side by sides, they're great for those kind of things too.
Love it.
And Emilio and Laura, please add anything to that, because I know you both have like your own expertise in those things. So
You're gonna go for it, Laura.
I mean, I'll just add, yes to what Tim said. But, just to simplify things, going back to the personas, how do they prefer to consume content? If they're looking to learn how to do something, they probably do prefer, a video. So asking those questions, if you're trying to learn a new process, how do you prefer to learn? If you're trying to get some quick tips, how do you prefer to get those? If you have some free time, do you like pulling up a podcast, or, do you sit and scroll on your phone? What are your behaviors? Because that'll really guide you into, how much you should be investing into the different types of content.
Well, maybe I could embellish a little for Emilio. Like, so let's say some client was like the guy I'm remembering had a holistic medical product, and he was sort of uh, bolstering a website he'd already begun with educational content. So, what would your recommendation be to someone maybe in a stage like that where they were about to launch a product, had already a little bit of content? Like, is there if they've got a budget, could there be any finer understanding for someone in his position about, well, you should spend this percentage for paid social, and versus maybe bulking up some of the content, making more sophisticated looking educational videos or something? Do you have any guidance for someone that would be like that?
Yes, it depends a lot on every business, right? It's paid is a funny thing because there are some industries it's so expensive. Search can be so expensive. For example, one example that I have all the time is the lawyers that work on, car accidents, the ones that pay these big billboards, they pay hundreds of dollars per click on search. Just the same thing. It's a super competitive space. And there are some areas where you still can pay in theory, just $1 or $2 per click. So it varies a lot depending on the industry. But in general, I would say that this for search, because unless you're in a brand new industry where very few content has been written, and content, as Tim was saying, either you pay for it or you put time on it. It's time consuming and it will take some time. I will start with a small budget pay search for very transactional terms, if they are available, right? If there's a crowd searching for, and you are a local company, then you start local just for people that is ready to buy. That's where you put your money. While you start building your content, right? While you start building the top of the funnel, because as I was saying, there's a point where it will not scale unless you're willing to keep expanding the reach of the demographic, right? Going from local to regional, state, national. Then you can keep it up until a certain level, or if you keep adding products and all that. So I will start with transactional keywords as close to your market that you can be, right? That you can sell, while you build your engine for content either by yourself or with the help of an expert that can bring that additional traffic. And then you shift your paid advertising more for remarketing purposes, right? To continue to be top of mind with the people that is coming from your website. That will be for paid search. For social, I will do it in some cases the other way around. Yes, it's true that you can just throw some money at Facebook and show, some posts and all that. But I think that in social, it's better to first understand where your audience is spending time and build a community and have time to develop a group of people that follow your page or yourself and test some content ideas with that crowd. And once you understand the kind of content that they like to consume and the platforms they are spending time, then you can take a little bit of that knowledge and put it on paid social, right? Kind of like paid to amplify the best content that you have put out there organically. That's better, because I think search is not less forgiving, but it's easier to prevent you from making mistakes, because you pay for the keyword, then you are obligated to have a relevant headline and a relevant offer. But on social, it's so easy to just promote anything to anyone, right? And don't have any impact. So my recommendation would be build your community, discover what works, what network works for you organically, and then from that learning, take some budget to start. I honestly, I don't have mixes, just you try one or the other. I know for sure, for example, there are some kind of businesses where paid search made total sense, like for example services that are like you have to pick up the phone to get help, like towing services. Your car is wrecked in the middle of the highway. Those are paid search, You don't do paid social for that unless you are doing memberships or something like that. And the other way around, for things that people rarely search for, like Tim was saying, right? More impulses, more disposable income kind of transactions. Probably you want to spend some time on social, building a community, and just spend some money on very transactional certain terms, like when people is ready to buy, if that's the case. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does. Very good.
All right.
We'd love to hear about what you guys do and get some specific answers for you if you care to share. Right group.
Quite good, yes. Yeah, you can even share if you have tried something and hasn't worked so far, or you have worked. That's also, helpful to know. Is there maybe industries that we are not aware of?
We got somebody in chat, Tarika.
Have an e-commerce business that offers products focused on.
Tarika's got bad luck with Facebook ads for a e-commerce business focused on outer beauty without sacrificing inner health. Would you have any recommendations for her, Emilio?
If you can come out of mute, that would be great, Tarika. But if not, can you tell me when you mean that you don't have luck? What part is that you don't have luck? Is that you're not getting purchases, I guess, or people is not engaging with the ads? Maybe she's going to type in, yeah, they do not engage. They do engage, yes. Okay, so every situation is different. And honestly, for e-commerce, probably Tim will have more examples about that. Tim kind of like help me out here. But one thing that I know about e-commerce very well is that it doesn't matter the channel. The conversion rates are very small, right? Even if you come from organic, the percentage of people that make a purchase when you drive into your website is quite small. And I'm talking about bad cases, less than 1% of the visitors purchase. And best cases on average is going to be close to 2%, 3% of the visitors on any given day actually purchase something. And especially if you have a store that is, building a brand, bringing traffic through paid is going to be very hard. And it's not necessarily the channel, it's the level of trust that the visitor have with your website. So in my recommendation for paid social in those scenarios would be that either you already have a big crowd on your website, and I will put my money on remarketing those with offers on social proof or maybe discounts or coupons. Or if you don't have a big crowd that is coming organically to your website, then I will just consider all that investment on Facebook more of a branding consideration, educating people and just exposing them the products, because it's going to take a lot of touches. In the meantime, one way that you can take more advantage of the investment is to try to put in the process something that allows you to get some information out of them if it's not a purchase right now, so you can continue the conversation later. For example, you can offer a subscription to our newsletter, or maybe some kind of coupon or something like that that they can use later, not with the intention of actually getting a sale, but getting some information, then go into a newsletter and try to continue nurturing them, because it's going to take a while. there are other cases, and I think that's not yours, where there's actually people searching for the product that right away. And in that case, rather than Facebook, I will put some of the investment on Google if you want to focus more on purchases. But those are some of the ideas that I have. I don't know, Tim, if you have any other comments on e-commerce.
Yeah, and I'm thinking that that's related to the same question that's in the chat here that said, so would you have to spend thousands to get great results? That would be, I guess you can kind of direct that, like paid and SEO, you're paying essentially both ways to get traffic. But one of the things that Emilio made this statement years ago, and it's always kind of stuck with me, is like with paid, you're basically renting. With SEO, you own the land, or you own the real estate. And there are two different types of investment. Paid being your Google ads, your Facebook ads, things like that. That's going to bring you the then and now traffic. Whereas with SEO, you're going to have to take 6, 12, 24 months to build that audience. And even at that, the traffic that you have on year 1 and then the traffic that you have in year 5 is going to look very different, because you're continuing to keep building on that foundation as long as you keep doing the right practices and adding the right things to it. By way of how much you have to invest with SEO, it comes down to whether or not you hire somebody, or whether or not you're bold enough to go and try and do it yourself. And like all things, the results will come quicker if you have somebody else that knows what they're doing, do the work for you, and they'll know what to watch for. But at the same time, if you're bootstrapping to get started, there's lots of resources out there that can give you some basic guidelines on getting started and doing the basic. And that could be just building your initial foundation. So that way, when you come to an SEO, your investment is going to be returned quicker, because it's not building that initial audience. If you came to me and you have 100 visits a month to your site, it's going to take a long time to get that to where all of us are going to be excited, because your site is basically on the foundational level. But if you came and it's like, hey, I have 3, 4, 5,000 users per month, then I can say like, okay, we have a little bit of an audience that's there. We can build on this. The site is not in its infancy, it's further along. And we can then start building things more rapidly to scale that then to 10,000 users, 20,000 users, and so on. But where your time needs to be spent, or what you need to do for the SEO side, if you have an e-commerce, you want to focus on, if you use a Shopify, you're going to want to focus on optimizing your collection pages. You don't want them to be perfect. You use Shopify, awesome. So in Shopify, you have your collections, your products, and of course your homepage. So you want a good navigation. From the navigation, your collections, you want to make sure that they're clearly labeled, but then also that you're optimizing them. So don't use very ambiguous terms or things that somebody that's not right in the very bottom of the funnel of your audience. If you have like a specific name for what you call a product and there's a wider known name, use the wider known name. So if it's a concealer for the sake of it, then everything in that collection is concealers. Don't use whatever your branded term is for a concealer. And again, I'm just kind of guessing at beauty products here at the moment. So you want to make sure that you go for that more commonly searched term and then optimize your collection towards that. Bring in then your branding phrases and then the unique things that set your product apart, and make a really good collection page. And then your e-commerce, like your product page, then you want to optimize that as well. So great descriptions, amazing photography, tagging all of your images with alt text, thinking about your audience, what is it that makes your product different? And you mentioned that in the chat, but again, stating those things in there so it's very clear. I would say a couple of things that could be great resources for you. One would be the Unofficial Shopify podcast. They do weekly podcasts. It can be a little colorful at times, so I'm just putting that disclaimer out at the front end. But once they actually get into the meat and potatoes of the podcast, there's a wealth of information. They do product page teardowns, collection page teardowns. They share information on, you love all the colors of the rainbow. Good. So they will, you know, they'll go through different apps. They'll have all their e-commerce store owners share success stories and things that work for them. And then a company that's in the beauty space to take a look at is Glossier. They're crushing it. Like, they have a really well done site, but even signing up for their emails, getting into email flows, and that's kind of going to be like the next step beyond, like, once you build an audience, then is having email where you start winning them back. And that's a big part of, you know, when I do SEO and do it in e-commerce, if we grow that audience, we need to keep them coming back. And if we can build email lists, then we're working with a warm audience. So as we do new product drops, as we do other things, we have people that are more receptive to that. And there's a lot of cool things you can do in Shopify that really allow you to build deeper relationships with customers specifically, and knowing their buying habits and their intents and how to market to very specific niches within your customer base. But the first thing is just growing that, and you'll probably start with some paid, like Emilio said, but then you're going to want to grow an organic audience to be sustainable for the long term.
Yeah. One thing that I can add to that is that, you know, paid advertising is deceiving, because you can think of it as sales, and it's not. It's still marketing, right? It's still just helping you to reach out a potential audience, but you still have to do the trust building. It's just that with pay, you are having the luxury of speeding up that process because you're willing to put money. One metaphor that I can use: imagine that you have a store, a real store, brick and mortar, and you have it in a place where there's no other stores. And that will be the situation where you have your website and you're not doing anything, right? It's very hard to sell there because there's almost no one walking by, and the only people that will buy is someone that already know the location. And when you use paid advertising, it's like for a little while moving magically to the mall, right? Now you have the luxury of, you know, tapping into that traffic that these other big platforms, Google's, Facebook, LinkedIn, has built for them, and they are renting for. But this is still just people passing by, right? You still have to, over time, get them into the store. They will come a couple of times, and you will little by little educate and build trust. So even paid, usually for a brand new owner with a brand new store with a brand that is not well known, you are paying for branding, even when your goal might be conversions. Like, yes, you selected on Facebook e-commerce, and you want to get sales, but from the perspective of your user, they have never heard of you. They're there out of curiosity, just to kind of like get what's you offer. And as Tim is saying, building that social proof, and giving options beyond just purchasing might be more helpful, because it's going to be a long run, because you're just paying for the benefit of showcasing yourself, not really for getting sales right away.
Thanks, Emilio.
You're welcome.
We'd love to hear from more of you. Maybe give you guys about 5 more minutes.
What are mistakes people make with SEO? That could be a long list. But it's hard to put a specific thing on that, because really there can be so many different things, and it's not even that they know that they're making the mistakes. All right, it's over optimizing a page, so keyword stuffing, just trying to cram all the wrong things into a page. The other one is not understanding the searcher intent for the keyword. So they might think that they have a keyword, but the intent of that keyword is not going to match. So even if they wanted to rank, they can't rank. So if you looked up, you know, best app developer or app developer Greenville for the sake of it, page one is not going to have a specific organization or business rank on it. It's going to be all list sites. So you need to look at what the result page is, and that's going to determine whether or not that's worth optimizing for. It may make more sense to pay for an ad in Clutch Magazine or something like that, which they have a list site and they own like 3 or 4 other sites that are on page one. So the whole top half is all list sites and they're not actual companies. So if you optimize with all of your heart, like I'm going to rank this, Google's still going to say no at the end of it. So understanding basically the result page, the intent, don't keyword stuff, and then building dirty backlinks and then getting a penalty. So that's number 3. I see mommy and wife mode. I understand that. I got 2 little ones that'll be going to bed soon, so I'll have to transition to that mode too.
Yeah, we'll give like maybe 3 more minutes so we can get any last minute questions. I agree.
Yeah.
I learned a lot tonight.
Yeah, we appreciate it very much, guys. I know it's a large chunk of your evening and a lot of information, so thank you for sticking with us. So.
And great slide deck. I appreciated how you guys all had the design ran through all 3. That was great.
Thank you.
Yeah. Give it about 1 more minute, guys. You got good, intelligent people here at your beck and call. Throw it at them while you can. Mika says thank you, everybody.
All right. I was in mute. Thank you, guys. I'm looking at the messages on the side there, so thank you all.
Thank you. Have a great night, everyone.
All right,
Same to you.
guys.
Night,
Thank
Amelia.
you.
Good night, Laura. Good
Bye,
night, Laura. Thank you.
everybody.
Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you, Nicole.
Bye.